Welcome again to Bloomerang Academy, where we're talking about year-round fundraising with our friends from Qgiv. Joining us today is Caitlin Lipham, a customer marketing manager from Qgiv. Hi, Caitlin.
Hi, Diana. It's great to be here.
What's the weather like where you are?
Hot. I actually did not look at what the temperature is. I just know that here in Central Florida, it's always pretty hot and muggy, and I don't see any rain yet outside, but key indicator on yet, because usually those showers pop up.
Always have to be ready for rain. Well, thank you so much again for joining us today, and I'll let you take it away.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much, Diana. Like I said, I'm really happy to be here with you guys today. Have a lot of great content that we're going to get through. So I think everyone should be able to see my screen right now. So as Diana welcomed us all to the call, we're going to be talking about year-round fundraising. So let's dive in. So a little bit more on my background for those of you that aren't familiar with me on the call. Like Diana said, my name is Caitlin Lipham. I'm the customer marketing manager here at Qgiv. I've been with Qgiv for about a year, and I get to do a lot of really great things with my job that I'm very passionate about. But what I'm most passionate about are helping to create resources for fundraisers and host webinars like this. And the reason for that is because I actually spent 7 years as a fundraiser with the American Cancer Society. So I joined the society with a portfolio of events that I managed here in Central Florida. And then after a couple of years, I went on to become a senior development manager. So I managed a team of fellow fundraisers. So we got to put on a lot of great events, work with volunteers, work with a local board, learned a lot during that time. So that's a little bit about me on the professional side of things. On the personal side of things, I was recently married. So if I accidentally refer to myself as Caitlin Simmons, please know this is the same person. That's me. I inherited a stepson, and my husband inherited a dog. So this is Molly. She's got her party hat on. She's really excited you guys are on the call today. And she's an honorary marketing team member here at Qgiv because she's present for just about every single call. And in fact, she's asleep behind me right now. So hopefully she doesn't start snoring. I did mention that I work for Qgiv. So like I said, I've been here for about a year. And for those of you not familiar with Qgiv, Qgiv is an online fundraising platform, and we provide fundraising software for our amazing nonprofit clients. And some of our solutions include online donation forms and event registration forms. We have platform for peer-to-peer events, auctions, and text fundraising. So lots of great stuff. And we're going to hear more about some of those tools and how to weave those into your year-round fundraising plans. So let's dive right into what we're going to cover. So we're going to share about why year-round fundraising is important. That should be an obvious one for everybody on the call. We know it's important to drive those dollars to support our missions. We're going to be discussing tools and event styles that you can include into your year-round fundraising plans. And then we're going to talk about some overarching tips on engagement, donor stewardship, retention. Then we'll play a quick clip about Bloomerang's integration with Qgiv, and we'll share some resources about how Qgiv can help. And like Diana referenced at the beginning of the call, we will wrap today's session with a Q&A, so be sure to submit those questions and we will do our best to answer. But I do want to turn it over now to Diana to do a quick poll. So we're talking about year-round fundraising today, and I would love for everybody to vote on what they feel describes where they're at with their year-round fundraising strategy. So whether maybe you feel really great and confident about your plan, or you've been using the same things for a while, you want to try something new, or you're a sponge, you're here today to soak it all in. Maybe you're new to the nonprofit industry. So I'm going to give everybody a little bit of time to get those answers in. And I know that we may have a range of some different folks on the call, so your experience may vary. So maybe you've been fundraising for decades or you're new. Either way, I hope that you'll be able to take away something from this call that it'll spark some creativity or give you a new idea to try out. So Diana, what do we have for our poll results right now? So
Thank you everyone for answering the poll. It looks like 51% have you been using the same tactics for a while and need some new ideas. 45% are kind of new to the nonprofit world and are here to take it all in, whereas 4% have a solid year-round fundraising plan in place.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for participating in that poll, and thanks Diana for recapping those results. So I think we landed with everybody feeling like a B. So I've been using the same tactics. We want to learn some new ideas. So I hope this session today will help you with that. But now let's shift gears and talk a little bit about why year-round fundraising is important. So this first point, I think pretty obvious, right? It's going to create a stable flow of funding for your mission. It's going to help you do what you need to do to fuel all of those great initiatives that you're doing. Another key element of year-round fundraising that I think is equally important to getting those dollars in is also creating that consistent engagement, right? So by having these events and these campaigns where you're asking for donations, you're asking for support, you're going to get more engagement from your community that you serve. You're going to be creating a buzz around your mission because you're getting folks excited about what their dollars are going to do. A couple of notes when it comes to year-round fundraising is that I'm a firm believer in this, that relying on just one campaign or event to hit your goal, it's going to be pretty risky, right? For most of you, the communities that you serve are pretty diverse. Not everybody's in the same age range. Not everybody's going to be drawn to the same kind of event. So you want to make sure that you're doing something that is going to have a wide appeal, or you have a variety of different events and campaigns that will speak to most of those individuals in your community. So think through what campaigns can be ongoing and what events can you layer in that you can really reach all of those groups. And then last but not least, when it comes to year-round fundraising, is that it's so important to plan in advance. I know in fundraising, especially because I was fundraising during the pandemic, so at the beginning and during, that you can't always plan for everything that pops up. And you do need to have a level of flexibility and shift tactics from time to time. But when you do have the luxury of time to plan, definitely do so. And this includes making sure that you have the tools that you're going to need to support all of these great ideas that you have. So think through what kinds of events and campaigns you want to be doing and make sure that you have what you're going to need to support that. So now let's talk about some different tools and ideas of how you can support your mission year-round. So I'm going to start with probably one of the most basic things that hopefully everyone on this call has for their organization, and that is an online donation form. So think about this as like the Swiss Army knife of your fundraising tool set. So you definitely want to make sure that you have a way that is not only convenient for your staff and yourself to accept those donations, but also for your donors. I remember a lot of times when donors would have checks, they would feel nervous about dropping that in the mail. And in fact, they would ask either myself or other team members to drive out and collect those checks. That takes a lot of time away from resources. I know fundraisers are never going to turn down a dollar, so we get creative in getting those donations. But if you can, definitely encourage your supporters to give online because it's just convenient for everyone. And we know that some organizations may not have a physical office in the community anymore. So those online donations are really important because you want to make sure you're meeting your donors where they are. Now, this goes beyond simply being able to donate online. A lot of folks use their cell phones. I'm one of those people. So these statistics definitely speak to me. So in our data here at Qgiv has actually shown that 52% of donors elect to give via mobile device. So you want to make sure that your forms are mobile optimized, AKA does this form look good on a cell phone or tablet, so donors can easily donate to you. And I love this stat here, and I definitely fall into this group that it's predicted that 75% of internet users will be mobile only by 2025. So just some basic tips there for your donation form. Now let's continue to talk about a few more best practices when it comes to our online donation forms. You want to make sure that you have a good looking form, right? I know this seems like a given, but go back, reevaluate your current forms, make sure everything is in line especially with your current branding standards. So like if you have certain colors that are associated with your organization or your logo, make sure you tie in those font colors into your form, because we know that good form design is going to reduce anxiety, it's going to remove friction, and it's going to help us build trust with our donors. And by having that cohesive branding in place, your donors won't be questioning if they're in the wrong place to donate to your organization. Another key thing when it comes to having a great donation form, especially on your main website. So for those folks that maybe they're doing some Googling, they land on your event, or not your event site, rather your main web page that speaks to your organization, they shouldn't have to hunt around for that donate button. It should be pretty obvious. And this is where embedding your donation form can be really helpful. It can save those donors time so you don't frustrate people where they're trying to figure out how to give you money. You want to make sure that this is easy. So those are just a couple more best practices when it comes to donation forms. Now, speaking to how this lends itself into year-round fundraising, make sure that you are reiterating your impact with your donation forms. And you can do this in several different ways. The two biggest are to use impact images and impact statements. So make sure that donors understand what their money is going to do when it comes to your general donation form that you have on your website. And be intentional with those donation amounts. So you can see on some of these examples I have on the slide where it's telling you what your $25 is going to do. You're going to be providing abandoned infants with nutrition and medical care. That's so powerful. Donors want to feel good about where their donations are going. And now for the year-round fundraising component of this, definitely make sure that you implement recurring prompts and monthly nudges on your online donation forms. So this is going to be very helpful in the year-round fundraising space. And consider tying in giving plans with your donation forms. So what does this mean? What this could look like is, let's say I had, I really wanted to make a personal goal of donating $1,200 to my favorite nonprofit. That's a big chunk at first. But if there's a donation form where I have a monthly option to break up that larger donation into, say, $100 per month, that's going to seem a little bit easier to accomplish for me versus donating $1,200 at once. Or even for folks where maybe they don't have a lot to give right now, they want to support you and they just want to give $5 or $10 a month, whatever that looks like. But we know it all adds up. Every dollar counts. So now I want to take a moment to show an actual real client example of a donation form. So give me just a moment so we can get in and see that browser example. But everyone should be able to see this example here from Lakeland Volunteers in Medicine. So this is a local organization that we work with. You can see on their website that they have this big, beautiful Donate Now button. It takes you directly to this form. So they have these options for one-time gift, or you can make it ongoing. And then they have this nudge right here. So multiply your impact. Another great thing with this form is that you can decide how you want to direct your support. You could dedicate the gift, and you have the option to cover those processing costs. And everyone in fundraising knows that if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So why not ask if folks can cover those additional costs? And then with ongoing, same thing. You can decide if you want to do a custom amount, decide how you want to direct that support. So I love this example from Lakeland Volunteers in Medicine, beautiful example of an embedded form. So now let's take a moment and get back into the PowerPoint presentation here. So we just saw that donation form example, but let's shift gears and talk about events and event registration forms and how you can also weave this into your year-round fundraising plan. So there's so many different kinds of events and things that you can do. So whether you're wanting to make sure something's still socially distanced, or you're doing something in person or taking a hybrid approach, the sky's the limit. We have a ton of examples of event ideas that you could try located on our blog, and we'll talk about, those resources at the end of the presentation. But consider using your event registration forms to encourage folks to spend some donor dollars on special programs. Maybe there's a membership that they could be a part of, and it could be something that you're hosting year round where people can give and engage. Another thing that I like to think about when it comes to your events, and something that I would do is I would kind of social media stalk a lot of the other organizations in my community to see what events they were doing. So I wanted to make sure that especially if I was going to try something new, that one, it wasn't exactly the same thing. I know that there are some common themes of events that we all do, regardless of the mission. But I would take an idea that maybe someone else was doing and think about, how could I do it? Where's my tie into my mission that it's going to set this apart and it's going to generate engagement and inspire people to get involved and come to this event because it's maybe something they haven't seen. And then another benefit of looking into what others are doing in your community is maybe not competing with each other as much. So if I saw there was a big event that was very popular, I would try my best to maybe not host my event on that night. That's not always a perfect science, but just something to think about when you're researching what kind of event you want to do. And then other ways you can use an event registration form. So I've referenced memberships, or maybe it's to sponsor an individual. And then this is a great idea for some year-round fundraising to get those dollars coming in the door, is to use your event registration forms for a chance drawing or a raffle. So you could host something monthly. So you could get some items donated, and maybe you could theme it with a holiday. So maybe it's a Valentine's Day basket. And then in spring, so starting in April, maybe it's a springtime basket or something like that. So get creative with how you can tie in some different themes, and you can have a raffle or chance drawing going on in the background. And this is also another way that you can work with community partners to get those items donated. So just a great thing that I would always do in the background. Some items you may find do better than others. So just pay attention to what's resonating with your constituents and your supporters. And again, a lot of ideas on our blogs when it comes to registration forms and events. Couple of other best practices when it comes to events and event registration forms to inspire urgency are promo codes and early bird specials. Especially if you're having an in-person event, I find I like to know a little sooner than later how many people are going to be joining. I know we used to call it last minute Lakeland, what I would fundraise here in Lakeland, Florida, where it always seemed like everybody waited until the last minute to register for that event. So then you're scrambling logistically, try to pull everything together. So think about ways you can encourage and incentivize people to sign up sooner than later. And then that gives you an idea of how much more income you need to kind of like fill in the gaps over the course of the year. So that's a little bit about online event registration forms, online donation forms, but I want to shift gears and talk about peer-to-peer events and spend a little bit more time here. Now, I know we have some new folks that are on the call, so I'll give a brief overview of what peer-to-peer fundraising is, but that's basically when you have individuals coming together to organize personal campaigns to collect donations from their friends or family. So they could sign up as a participant online, or they could form or join a fundraising team. So they're working within their networks to inspire their friends to give to support your mission. So there's a lot of power here with peer-to-peer because you're getting exposure for your mission to people that may not have otherwise heard about your organization. Now, this next slide here, there's a lot of really great statistics on here, but what I think sums it up the most is that first one. So 39% of Americans say they donated to charity based on a request from a friend or family member. That's huge. So I personally loved utilizing peer-to-peer events when I was in fundraising because of this. I mean, there's so many reasons, but this was a huge reason. I would be able to get in front of people that I may not have otherwise met. And think about like other things in life. When we're asking for advice from friends or family, you may say, hey, have you checked out that new restaurant? Or maybe they didn't like it, or they had a good experience or a bad experience, but you kind of trust the people that you know a little bit better. And so that same concept can apply when it comes to peer-to-peer fundraising. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you could run a peer-to-peer campaign or event. Sky's the limit when it comes to doing what you feel is going to work best and serve your mission, serve your organization. A A lot of times with peer-to-peer events, you may have the fundraising component going on for however many months, and then perhaps that culminates into a celebration at the end of the peer-to-peer campaign. So think about like a 5K, any special kind of race, a bowl-a-thon, something like that, where it's kind of a staff-led initiative and you're having your supporters come together after they've raised all of this money. And typically it's an event that's open to the community in some way, shape, or form, or maybe you're selling a ticket for it. It could look multiple different ways. But with peer-to-peer fundraising, you don't always have to do that big event component. I know, especially for folks that are new to the nonprofit world, or maybe you're a newer nonprofit and you don't quite have all of those resources yet to host a large event for thousands and thousands of people, you can still utilize peer-to-peer for that network fundraising. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. But other things that you can weave into peer-to-peer is what we refer to as the celebration model. So you can see this example from City Team up on the slide here, where they're coaching their peer-to-peer participants to ask for support for a birthday. I think everybody's seen that, like on Facebook, where, hey, and for my birthday this year, I'm accepting donations to support my favorite nonprofit, or to celebrate my wedding anniversary, or to celebrate my graduation. So lots of different things that you could use to encourage your participants to raise money and ask for those donations. The other piece when it comes to peer-to-peer that we see a lot of are DIY fundraisers. So that means a do-it-yourself event. So you have your teams, your peer-to-peer participants coming together, asking for donations, and sometimes they pair that with their own events. So I would have a lot of peer-to-peer teams that would do golf tournaments. They would host their own spaghetti dinner nights. They would be the ones working with local restaurants to do spirit nights and give back nights and that sort of thing. So lots of power here with peer-to-peer and formatting it to a way that's going to really fit your organization, your resources, and your community, which is so important because you never want to bite off more than you can chew at first. I referenced network fundraising a little bit ago. And what I mean by that is look to engaging local celebrities, if you will. So like a mayor, a popular sheriff, a city commissioner, a philanthropic business owner to outraise each other. You could even look at engaging board members in this same way, because a lot of times these folks are competitive. They want to see who can raise the most. Now, you could take this style of network fundraiser and combine it with a celebration or an awards dinner at the end. It's kind of up to you and how you want to map that out. But we know with peer-to-peer in general that gamification works. So gamification, it's making it fun. You're adding that spirit of competition into the fundraising, and you can provide incentives to your fundraisers. And you could look into either a digital incentive or a tangible incentive, or a combination of two. A lot of times we see t-shirts given out as that physical incentive of, oh, you raised $100, you're part of the Swan Society, now you get your t-shirt. But I know that maybe not everyone has the resources to do t-shirts. So maybe that makes a little bit more sense to do something more of like from a digital approach. And I have an example here up on the screen where you can see these adorable badges from an organization called Seattle Shakespeare. They're one of our clients here at Qgiv. And they have these adorable little bears and different icons to really denote different milestones for their fundraisers to give recognition. So maybe there's somebody on an event committee, they completed setting up their profile, whatever it is that you want to incentivize or give a special recognition or nudge to get completed, look into using fundraising badges. And you could do this also to help set those fundraising milestones. So maybe they raise their $100 or they raise their first $500, they get a special badge, and maybe you tie that special digital badge with a swag item like a branded water bottle or something like that. Again, keep in mind what's going to make sense for your organization and your budget. Now, I referenced that you don't always have to have that big in-person event or maybe even a virtual event if you don't necessarily have the ability to do that right now. But consider hosting peer-to-peer campaigns seasonally and having a spring and a fall event if you can. And spring and fall are usually a good time because of climate. So think about the state that you're in. So I'm in Florida. I wouldn't want to host a 5K in the middle of July in the afternoon. So think about those kinds of external factors. So I love hosting events in the spring and the fall. And then that way you could time it to where each peer-to-peer campaign is a six-month period. So that ties back into our year-round fundraising plans. And we have tons of ideas on peer-to-peer events and ways to engage your community. And we'll be sure to share how to get to those resources on our blog, and we'll have some in the follow-up information as well. So a couple things here when it comes to thinking about peer-to-peer events and how to engage your supporters. So with peer-to-peer campaigns and events, there's typically two groups you want to make sure that you are communicating with, so you can retain them. And those groups are your peer-to-peer participants and their donors. So you have your registered peer-to-peer participant, and then the donors are the friends and families that are donating to that individual. So make sure that you are thanking both of those groups. You're communicating with them in a slightly different way. And we have a great ebook on this that we can share in the follow-up, where it dives more into peer-to-peer retention. Now, with peer-to-peer, especially when it comes to feeding into your year-round fundraising efforts, you want to make sure that you're coaching and setting your participants up for success. You want to give them the tools to where they can be successful. So this means that you're going to send key communication before, during, and after your campaign, because normally when folks, you spend a lot of time recruiting these individuals to support you. So of course, retaining them is going to be powerful for year-round fundraising. So, and like I said, when they sign up at first, they're usually more excited. So you want to capitalize on this excitement and make it actionable so they don't lose steam. So if you're not communicating with them on a regular basis, it's not going to help your year-round fundraising efforts, because they may forget or not, they may feel like they don't have the tools that they need to be successful. So make sure you're working to do that. And then like we talked about with donation forms, same concept here with peer-to-peer. Leverage recurring donations. Make sure you're educating your peer-to-peer participants about matching gifts. And we'll talk a little bit about what matching gifts are later on in the presentation. But it's key to utilize your peer-to-peer event sites to give information, educate your donors, reiterate their impact, and give them ways to keep them engaged year-round, so they'll keep the fundraising dollars coming in the door. Another thing you can look at when it comes to peer-to-peer events is, consider having a store component with your peer-to-peer event. And that could be, maybe you have some swag items that people could purchase. And a pro tip there is definitely work with your community partners. Maybe there's a local t-shirt screen printing company that you could wheel and deal some in-kind sponsorship for to donate those shirts or get at a highly discounted rate, and you could sell those for a donation. So that's another great thing to weave into your year-round fundraising plan. So now I'm going to show another couple of examples here when it comes to peer-to-peer events from actual Qgiv clients. So everyone should be able to see on the screen this great peer-to-peer site from Northern Illinois Food Bank. So you can see they have this thermometer widget here. They're saying, here's our goal. We're 41% to our goal. This is what we need to achieve. So that's going to help encourage that engagement with the peer-to-peer campaign. Now, I talked a lot about resources and why it's important to arm your participants with resources to further add to your year-round fundraising efforts. And this organization did a great job of arming their participants with these tools right from the jump on their event website. So you can see they have posters. So if they had a business, they could print off a poster, display it in the window. They have logo and media resources. They have social media graphics that folks can share, like on a Facebook page or whatever their cup of tea is for reaching their friends and family and their internal networks. So I love this example. And they have, they're reiterating their impact. They're giving different stats. They're saying how these donor dollars are going to help. And this next example that I wanted to show speaks a little bit more to that network, local celebrity engagement. So I love this campaign. It's from Central Florida Speech and Hearing Center. they do a campaign called Mr. Central Florida. And what they do is they recruit local celebrities to see who can raise the most, who can get the honor of being crowned Mr. Central Florida. And Lieutenant Jim here, oh my goodness, he raised almost $71,000. And these are his efforts. So somebody coached Lieutenant Jim, they gave him the resources, they taught him how to fundraise, and he ran with it. And you could see, like, we had another really great second place here. So all of these individuals, they're competing to see who can get crowned. And then you can see the current leaderboard here. That's the page we were just on. And they use a lot of really great navigation areas up here. And they also weave in an auction into their campaign, which is a great segue into a little bit into the presentation here, where now we're going to talk about some auction examples. So love both of those peer-to-peer events. Now, when it comes to auctions, and something I want to mention when it comes to really all of our events is another stream of income is sponsorship. So if you have an event, whether that's in person or virtual, make sure you have a sponsorship packet, because that can be another revenue stream, especially if you have events sprinkled in throughout the year where you're engaging your sponsors and you're getting more engagement and recognition in your community by asking for those sponsorships, because there will be a little bit of education there when you're trying to sell people on why they need to support your amazing mission and what are the benefits of, you know, being a part of the event. So when I hosted auctions, sponsorship was a big part of that goal. So make sure you're leveraging that. If you're newer to the nonprofit world, or you're at a newer organization and you don't have a sponsorship packet built out, that's okay. We've got some resources on that on our blog. So again, with auctions, they're really versatile. You can do them as hybrid, in person. I love that if you have an existing event, so let's say you have that spaghetti dinner night, or maybe there's a golf tournament that you always do, why not wrap in an auction into that? Because that's going to give you additional revenue. Don't be afraid to get creative, or maybe even think of a new event just for the sake of having an auction. Also, you can increase your mission awareness simply by asking for auction items and sponsorships. Now, normally auctions, you want to start planning those far in advance, because there are some moving pieces there. So this is another way to get the word out kind of year round, by asking individuals and companies for those auction items. And I love auction items because you don't have to pay for them. You're getting them donated when you can. So lots of great opportunity with auction items. And then also, we talked about how peer-to-peer can help you reach supporters that may not have otherwise heard of your organization. I would argue that the same thing is true with auctions, because if you have a fun event and you have posters around town, you're promoting this fun event, people that maybe they didn't hear about the mission component, but they see that there's a party coming up, there's something they want to be at, they might be inspired to join. And then while they're there, you have their attention, their captive audience, and they'll learn all about your mission. And I think auctions are important because they are so versatile that you can really weave that into different events that are going to speak to most groups in your community. So just as an example, if I'm being honest with everybody on the call, I would probably be a little bit more motivated to go to a gala, like where I could dress up to a theme, like a Roaring 20s theme, bid on some auction items, have a nice dinner, and go home and feel good about my support, versus maybe waking up at 5:30 on a Saturday to go run around a lake for a 5K. Not that I haven't done it before, but I would prefer an auction. So, but you have to think about what are the groups in your community, what's going to make sense, in having a variety of events. So maybe this, instead of the auction gala being a family friendly, maybe it's more geared to be a kid-free environment, and then you do a family friendly peer-to-peer 5K event, something like that. So just remember to diversify those efforts. Another thing you could think about with auctions, because we know it's, you're not necessarily going to have like a gala or an auction every single month with that in-person component, but maybe you could look at hosting mini auctions at key points during the year. So maybe you pair that with a Giving Tuesday fundraiser, or a spring fundraiser where you have some auction items and it's solely hosted online. So those are some other ways that you could weave that into your year-round fundraising plan. But I definitely recommend that if you do have the ability to host you know, an auction event with a gala component, golf, whatever that looks like for your organization or your community, please consider throwing that into your year-round fundraising plan. Another great piece that I feel comes along with auctions, and honestly, you could probably tie this in with most events if it makes sense, is consider having an honorary chair, because they're going to help you get the word out to their supporters. Normally, what I would look for in an honorary chair is somebody that was either mission affected or really passionate about the mission that I was raising money for, and they had a big following in the community. So you can work with them year round to get engagement, to help sell those tickets to your gala auction night. And then you could utilize them at the event right before you do that cash call. So I've heard this called a lot of different things: paddle raise, mission moment, call to the heart, where you're giving, you know, an inspirational speech. You're really tying people into the mission, educating them about what you do, and then you do that cash call. So you can utilize an honorary chair at your event in that way, and to also help you drum up support year round. So let's shift gears. So now that we talked about auction and peer-to-peer, let's talk about text fundraising. I believe the last Qgiv Academy session that we hosted with Qgiv's Justin Cook was on this topic specifically. So I won't spend a whole ton of time here, and we'll have some resources going out about that so you can dive in deeper to text fundraising. But we talked about in the beginning of the call about why it's important to meet your donors where they are. We know our donors are on their smartphones a lot of the time. So that's why text messaging is so important. And this stat, there's a ton on the slide, but the one that I think is the most important, or that speaks to me the most rather, is that 98% of text messages are read within the first 5 minutes. I would always tell my fundraising staff that emails can be passive. You know, it's really easy to delete an email, but with a text, you're probably going to open up that notification and read it. Whether or not you respond to it, that's a different story, but you're probably going to open that text and you're going to read it. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can utilize and leverage text fundraising for year-round engagement. I do want to note that you don't want to barrage your donors, so don't send out a bunch of messages. Make sure that you're being strategic and intentional. I can't define, you know, a bunch of messages for everyone, but you probably wouldn't want to get a text every single day, for example. So make sure you're being strategic and you have a plan of how you want to use your texts. And then with text fundraising, you could use it as a standalone way to reach supporters, where you're capitalizing on national or local giving days, like a Giving Tuesday, or maybe it's Support Education Month and you're education focused nonprofit where you're tying it in with that theme. There's a lot of ways to get creative for that and to make that text fundraising campaign. Or you could combine text fundraising with an event. So maybe it's to just draw awareness for that event, or you want to weave it into your day of event. So we just talked about with auctions how having that paddle raise or that call to the heart moment where we're going to ask folks to donate. Another tactic that you could do here with text fundraising is have some QR codes sprinkled about that'll get them to a donation form. So they don't even have to raise their paddle if they don't want to, but they can just scan that code and donate, put it on event programs, signage, high traffic areas. And then you can also schedule reminders for donors to complete their gifts. This is especially important at an in-person event environment. Now, when it comes to additional year-round engagement, I know this is a call where we're talking about year-round fundraising, but it's also important that you're getting information out where it's not necessarily always a financial ask. So maybe that's a volunteer opportunity. You're just saying thank you, or it's a quick update about the mission of you know, we just had this huge breakthrough in research. Click here to read more on this article. So lots of things you can do there. Now, I want to talk a little bit about engagement strategy, and then we'll talk about donor retention and stewardship. So we talked about the tools and event ideas and campaigns, but I wanted to focus on some overarching strategies that we can use that's going to benefit your year-round fundraising, regardless of the kind of event or campaign. These are some best practices. So, you know, in fundraising, that building relationships is so important. I feel like that was a huge part of my former life, was getting out in the community, pounding the pavement, drumming up that awareness, building those relationships. And I would focus a lot on civic organizations. So think about your Rotary clubs, your Kiwanis clubs, I'm a Kiwanian, and I know we're always looking for people to speak. So that's an easy way to get in front of people. They always need speakers, and they usually have nonprofits come in and give updates. So great way to engage those groups that are typically philanthropically minded. If you're a member of your local chamber of commerce or they have free networking events, definitely consider going to those to get the word out and educate the community about your nonprofit and upcoming community events you have. I also have YP groups, so young professional groups. Usually those can be an offshoot of a chamber or maybe something, completely different, but it's usually made up of millennials. They're looking for things that they could add to their resume, skills enrichment, those sorts of opportunities. So, connect with them, share your volunteer opportunities, or maybe it's even like for a board position or something like that. Other ways you can get engagement are, definitely working with your local businesses. So we talked about sponsorship. Local businesses are also a great way to recruit teams, especially when it comes to peer-to-peer fundraising. So what I would do is I would target some, bigger corporations, and we didn't always have like a whole bunch of big corporations in town, but even small to medium-sized businesses, I'd go in and do what we would call an internal kickoff. So we'd come in, do a presentation about the mission, and then share with them about how they can get engaged. So, build those relationships with your community partners that are businesses. Additional partners, and some of this may be specific to your mission, maybe not, but hospitals, schools, youth groups, churches. So definitely make sure you're doing what you can to connect with these groups, to draw awareness, get volunteers, and to encourage those year-round donations. I have a note here about local media. So partnering with local media is always a great way to get exposure for your events and to get that mission awareness in your community. And a lot of times I would wheel and deal that in-kind sponsorship to say, hey, I'll give you a table at my gala if we can get X amount of radio ads and I can come on and do an interview with my honorary chair. Or maybe it's a local newspaper that they're just going to run some ads or sponsor thank yous, whatever that looks like. Just reach out, build those relationships as much as you can as possible. Now, we talked about, or I brought up matching gifts a little bit earlier. For those of you on the call that are unfamiliar with matching gifts, this is basically where an employer will match its employees, usually dollar per dollar, and that could look different. So let's say I donate $100. I work for, I'm just throwing this out there, State Farm, and then State Farm matches that $100. So that's a matching gift. And $4 to $7 billion in matching gifts goes unclaimed every year. So who wants to leave money on the table, right? So this is a great way to engage and get those year-round dollars coming in by getting those matching gifts. The other note I have up here is on community matches. So that could look like where maybe you have a philanthropic individual, or it's a law firm or whatever business, and they say, I'm going to match donations from everyone in the community, every donation you get up to $10,000. So those can be wildly popular as well. And so consider sprinkling in some community match opportunities within your fundraising plan. And you could tie that with a peer-to-peer event or a different kind of event. It's up to you, however you want to work it. Actually, one more thing I wanted to mention with matching gifts. If you are a Qgiv client on the call, we actually have a matching gift integration with cyber grants that's completely free. And we do integrate directly with HEP data and double the donation. If you want to learn more about our integrations, we've got tons of information on our site, but I did want to point that out. Now let's talk about retention. So retention stewardship definitely matters. You've spent a lot of time recruiting these individuals for your year-round giving campaigns, your events that are sprinkled in over throughout the year. So of course it matters to retain them because you put in a lot of time coaching these folks and building those relationships. We talked about how communication is important. So make sure they feel the love, they feel appreciated from you, and that you work to understand how they want to be recognized. So think about like maybe it's a social media shout out. Not everybody's comfortable with those, but get to know your constituents and your donors. I love a thank you card. I feel like I got a little bit of carpal tunnel from my last job of writing so many thank you cards, but I spent the time to do it because it worked. So that's going to help set you up for success by retaining those supporters for your next year's fundraising plan, because then you can invite them to come back, give those donations again, and continue getting engaged. So lots of different ways you can thank these people. Also, give them non-financial ways to help. So this could be asking them to volunteer at your facility. Maybe it's a special mission update event for the community you're hosting, because you're planting the seed, even if they aren't donors yet, or maybe they donated a long time ago and they haven't donated again, that you're reinvigorating that interest in your mission and your organization. So definitely tie that in with appreciation events and periodic touches. This is also very important. You want to make sure that you're tracking activities in your CRM. So if you have Bloomerang, make sure that you're tracking those activities, and because you want to make sure you're on the same page. We talked about social media a little bit. So you can use social media to get more engagement, do sponsor shout outs, let people know about upcoming events, how to purchase tickets. So make sure you're using social media in that way. And we talked about email communications. So make sure you're communicating with your constituents, with your donors, you're updating them of current events. And I love this example from Fresno Mission. They were pivoting an event style that they did, and they turned one event into 3 different styles of events, and they were educating their donors on what was to come. So keep that engagement going. So let's recap a little bit. So we know that year-round fundraising is crucial to your success. You want to plan ahead as much as you can for the entire year, and make sure you have the digital tools that you need to succeed. Now, we talked a lot about different ideas and campaigns that you could run, but from my perspective, where I think you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck when it comes to year-round fundraising are capitalize on recurring giving, those giving plans, DIY events with peer-to-peer fundraising, and then sprinkling in seasonal events such as auctions, 5Ks, whatever that looks like. And then, like what we just talked about, make sure you're engaging your community, you're stewarding your donors, you're thanking them, and that's going to help you build retention. So I hope you guys enjoyed that information about some ideas that you could try. But now I wanted to speak a little bit to the partnership that we have here between Qgiv and Bloomerang. So over the past 6 years, we've enjoyed our partnership with Bloomerang. Both Qgiv and Bloomerang exist to help people fulfill their passion to make a difference with thoughtfully designed, user-friendly fundraising software. So nonprofits can better target and personalize their fundraising programs by leveraging the donor data available within Bloomerang. So by working together, we're dedicated and invested in making the world a better place through our work with nonprofit organizations like yours. So we appreciate what you guys are doing. I know fundraising can be a lot. It's we just know that what you're doing in your community matters. So thank you so much for all of that. And now I'm going to play just a quick clip about the integration between Qgiv and Bloomerang.
Enhance your fundraising campaigns and events with Bloomerang and Qgiv. Working with thousands of organizations over the last 15 years has taught us how important it is to provide an exceptional donor experience while automating manual data entry. That way, you and your staff can focus your attention on cultivating donor relationships and fulfilling your mission. The direct integration between Bloomerang and Qgiv ensures that every gift and donor interaction in Qgiv is recorded in Bloomerang automatically. We've made it easy to set up mappings for everything from donations and event registrations to auctions and text fundraising. Let's jump in and see how it works. Once you've used your Bloomerang username and password to link your account in Qgiv, you'll be taken to a screen where you can configure your settings. Use the calendar to choose the date on which you'd like to start exporting data. In the frequency dropdown, you can choose from manual, hourly, or daily exports. Below the date, we have several options that can be toggled on based on your specific use of Bloomerang and how you'd prefer data to flow. In the default values area, you'll determine will be mapped by the integration. If you don't have any additional mappings, all activity will be exported to these default values. Designating a fund is required, but campaigns and appeals are optional. For both of these dropdowns, you can also choose to designate the values as unmapped. Or you can select Create New if it doesn't exist. When selected, if a transaction doesn't match a configured mapping, a Bloomerang campaign and/or appeal will be created using the form name with which the transaction is associated. If there's any extra information you'd like to add to the donation note field in Bloomerang upon export, you can choose from the options in the Extra Info drop-down menu. When you've configured your settings to your liking, click Save. Your API connection status should now show as active, and your basic setup is done. If you'd like to create more specific mappings, click the arrow next to the integration's name to display the optional mappings area, and then click Add Export Type. This is where you'll configure mappings if you'd like specific datasets mapped to something other than the default values in the settings area. For example, if you'd like to export data for a specific form, click Form, then select Add Mapping. In the Qgiv Data dropdown, you'll need to select the Qgiv form from which you'd like to export data. When you've configured your mapping, click Save. The process is similar for each dataset shown in the optional mappings area. There may be slight variations in how many choices you have in each dropdown. You can also add custom mappings. With custom mappings, you can dictate which target objects and fields you want data to go into during export. There are 3 custom mapping types: static, custom field, and standard field. For each type, you can map to a target object and field using the data from that custom type. Let's take a look at what happens when someone donates from a peer-to-peer fundraising page. Donors fill out the donation information. When they click Complete Donation, Qgiv charges the payment method and records the transaction. When you're ready to run an export to Bloomerang, navigate back to your integration settings and click Run Export, which is located to the right of the integration's name. Now we'll take a look at the transaction in Bloomerang. Notice that the fund, campaign, and appeal are what you set in Qgiv. The peer-to-peer fundraiser is soft credited. The note shows more Qgiv information, and the transaction is marked as processed by Qgiv. Click the Qgiv link to see the transaction's details in your Qgiv account. Great donor retention requires great data. Integrate Qgiv's online fundraising, event registration, text, peer-to-peer, and auction tools with your Bloomerang account to enrich your donors' profiles, understand their habits, and raise more money.
All right, so that was a nice video that spoke to a little bit about the integration. And I want to make sure that we have some time to get to those questions at the end. But I did want to note that we do have a lot of resources that you don't have to be a Qgiv client to access. I referenced our blog. We've got tons of webinars, a lot of support, ebooks, templates out there to help. So feel free to dig into that, some of that stuff, and we will have some information in the follow-up of how you can get to those resources. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Diana to help moderate the Q&A for today.
Thanks so much, Caitlin. I echo what Arthur said. There's so much great information that's in here. So thank you so much for that. Brendan has been helping answer questions behind the scene. Brendan, are there any that jumped out of you that would be good to answer for everyone?
Yeah, there actually was. I wanted to just quickly circle back to the ones that I was able to type out an answer to. If any of you all have any questions about those one-on-one conversations about how you're using a specific part of either of our systems, we're always happy to sit down with you and really dig into those use cases. Last thing we want to do is give you a blanket answer and not really understand exactly what you're asking about. So I did, send you all some links to our pricing and different areas of our website where you can go look at some of the tools that you're asking about, specifically on the text fundraising side and auction side. If there are any more questions related to those questions you had, or more details that you want to know, please feel free to reach out to us. That's what we're here for, is just to help you all understand the tools that are available to you. That said, I did leave Sarah Booker specifically because I thought it would be relevant to kind of explain to the broader audience. I know we've got 60 something folks on here. So just to help you understand where Qgiv and Bloomerang kind of come together as partners, and of course, where that overlap kind of is. So certainly Qgiv and Bloomerang do offer some of the same tools, specifically on the donation and event registration form side. But when it comes to auctions, some of our text fundraising tools, as well as most of the peer-to-peer functionality that we have, that's kind of the difference maker. That's where Qgiv does tend to become that resource for the Bloomerang team and the Bloomerang client base to have more tools available to them. So as you're expanding your different fundraising initiatives or trying new ways of fundraising, you still have a fully integrated solution in Qgiv that ties things directly back to your respective record keeping on the Bloomerang side. Qgiv is not a CRM, so we know that Bloomerang does a great job of maintaining that piece and that donor management concept for all of you as clients. And to further answer that next question, Sarah, that you had on not specifically the overlap, but more on how you can use other tools to integrate. I hope that video helped you, Sarah, kind of understand where the integration lives and how that data flows over. But yes, I think you referenced Sign Up Genius. Qgiv can be used very similarly, where we become the registration tool for your different events or your auction, and all of that data can flow very seamlessly into Bloomerang. We've done it for hundreds of clients at this point over the last several years, and we'd love to add you to that growing list. Again, if that didn't answer all of your questions there, Sarah, let us know. We're happy to expand today if we have a few more minutes, and obviously after the call at any time.
Absolutely. In line with that too, I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll. If you'd like a follow-up specifically, please let us know in the poll so we can make sure that someone from Qgiv will get back to you. I also wanted to point out, I saw Sarah's question as well. Sarah, it's helpful. I like what Brandon said of we can't just give blanket answers because we really want to know how are you using this information? What information are you getting? All of that helps determine how Qgiv can help you and bring that into Bloomerang. Wonderful question. I think there's a question here, Brandon, around what if you want text fundraising and auctions? Do you have to pay for each of those things separately, or is there a package deal where you can get both?
Yeah, those are two separate packages as far as the Qgiv platform is concerned. You can see all of our pricing on our website. We are a fully transparent company. We don't hide any fees or anything like that, like some do. But certainly Qgiv is here to help combine both of those. The best thing about our platform and really the pricing structure that we have is for you, Shelly, when you're talking about these different use cases, you may not be using these tools year round, and Qgiv does offer the flexibility to kind of opt into and kind of move away from different packages throughout those different seasonal campaigns or initiatives that you have. So we understand you're not doing auctions year round. You'll see on our pricing page that we do have monthly or quarterly options for that exact reason, so that you're not tied into a platform that maybe you're not using year round, and you can have that flexibility to try new things throughout the year.
Lovely.
I hope that helps.
Now we have a question here as well. Is Qgiv limited to US or Canada? Oh, looks like go ahead.
Maybe it's already there. Qgiv is currently, we do process both in US and Canadian dollars.
Oh, lovely. A follow-up question here from Shelly. If we sign up for auctions and text messaging, let's say for 2 months and then cancel, do you still have access to the data?
To the data, yes. That will always be yours. You'll always be able to pull that in our reporting. But the functionality to accept a new registrant for auctions or to do any of that mobile bidding would just be limited based on when you're paying for the product and when you're not. But yes, the data will always be accessible to you.
And I wanted to come on just real quick because I saw some of the folks asking about auctions and peer-to-peer. And Diana, I just want to make sure everyone knows that we're going to be doing a Bloomerang Academy in both August and September. August is going to be focused on text fundraising, and September is going to be on auctions and peer-to-peer. So hopefully you guys can join us then too.
That's a lovely call out. Thanks, Kim. So we haven't sent out those invites yet, so keep an eye out in your inbox. And we'll go ahead and include the dates when we send the follow-up email, so at least you can mark your calendars, even though we don't have the invites yet. Thank you for that.
Excellent. I do see a question. Can donation be collected and made to a bank in Bermuda as not in US or Canada? Typically, we work with clients that do have US based bank accounts. So while, in that scenario, I'm not exactly sure, we'd be happy to explore it and kind of figure out what your bank is set up as and figure out if this is a valid option for you. I can't necessarily speak to the Bermuda use case. I just haven't had any familiarity with that. Caitlin or Kim, do you guys know on that one?
I do not, unfortunately, but
well, we may have to
follow
get
up.
back to you, Deborah.
Not to worry, Deborah. We'll make sure that someone follows up via email.
I think that was it. Was there any others that I missed or that I know we're over, aren't we?
A little bit. While we don't have any questions at the moment, I wanted to say thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. It's never too late to think about fundraising. I know a lot of you will do your planning beginning of the calendar year or beginning of your fiscal year, but it's not, year-round fundraising is something to think about year round. So we hope this has been helpful for you. And thank you to our friends from Qgiv today, especially Caitlin. That was a lot of great information. Are there any last minute parting thoughts that you have for our friends today?
So I did want to mention, because I just get so passionate about this stuff, I could talk about it all day. So I apologize for running over a little bit, but I did want to note that there is more information about the integration between Bloomerang and Qgiv. So if you are a Qgiv client, you can find that on our help desk, or if you visit, I believe it's the Bloomerang site, and there's some information there about Qgiv, and it's a longer version of that video that we played on the call.
Absolutely. I feel like these webinars are just to whet your appetite and to show you what's possible. But of course, the teams would love to talk to you if you have specific scenarios that you're trying to set up. That's what we're here for. So please don't be afraid to reach out. And yes, everyone is going to get a link to the recording and the slides. So not to worry, maybe you have colleagues that jumped off a little bit early or you're coming in late. You're going to have access to all this wonderful information.
And Qgiv will be sending a follow-up email to all registrants next week with some links to things that Caitlin referenced today and some other resources too.
Absolutely. We're always happy to share all this information with everyone to make sure we all benefit from it and learn from it. So thanks for that too, Kim. So thank you again, everyone, for spending part of your afternoon with us. I hope you learned as much as I did. I learned as much from these webinars as you all. So I hope there was some things that you can pick up and act on and incorporate into your year-round fundraising strategy. And we hope we see you in our upcoming Academy classes soon. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.